Hey readers, welcome to the Shelf Addiction Podcast, and thank you for streaming or downloading today's Shelf Byte episode. If you're new here, Shelf Bytes feature spoiler-free book and audiobook reviews in about 5 minutes. I'm your host, Tamara Ford. If you'd like to chat with me about the book reviewed in this episode, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Shelf Addiction. In addition, don't forget that you can always find me both in our Facebook group, Shelf Addiction Official, or on the Patreon page. Speaking of Patreon, if you enjoy this show and would like even more content, please consider becoming a Shelf Addiction Patreon subscriber. You'll gain access to exclusive Patreon-only content, including monthly live streams, uncut video of podcast recordings, stickers, t-shirts, and more, depending on your subscription level. Join us now by clicking the link in the show notes or go to shelfaddiction.com and click on the Support Us tab. Help us make even more bookish content for your ears. If you'd like to show your support in a non-monetary way, please share this episode with bookish friends or on your favorite social media space. Let's jump into it. Today I am reviewing the suspense title, The Marsh King's Daughter by Karen Dion. The audiobook is narrated by Emily Rankin. Published June 13th, 2017 by G.P. Putnams & Sons and Penguin Audio, respectively. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this book, I'm going to start off with a Goodreads synopsis. The mesmerizing tale of a woman who must risk everything to hunt down a dangerous man who shaped her past and threatens to steal her future, her father. Helena Pelletier has a loving husband, 2 beautiful daughters, and a business that fills her days. But she also has a secret. She is the product of an abduction. Her mother was kidnapped as a teenager by her father and kept in a remote cabin in the marshlands of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Helena, born 2 years after the abduction, loved her home and nature, and despite her father's sometimes brutal behavior, she loved him too, until she learned precisely how savage he could be. More than 20 years later, she has buried her past so soundly that even her husband doesn't know the truth. But now her father has killed 2 guards, escaped from prison, and disappeared into the marsh. The police began a manhunt, but Helena knows they don't stand a chance. Knows that only one person has the skills to find the survivalist the world calls the Marsh King, because only one person was ever trained by him, his daughter. Okay, so let me tell you why I picked this book. I didn't pick it. It's a book club read, not for Shelf Addiction, but for one of my real world book club reads. And honestly, this is not something I would have found on my own. I think the thing that drew me to this initially was hearing that it took place in Michigan. And that's not something I read a lot in books. I know a lot of people have tagged this book as a thriller, but in my opinion, it's really not a thriller. Instead, it's a suspense title. This is not a whodunit. You know who did it and you know what they did. We even learn the why of it in the most low-key way. This story is more about the cat and mouse game that goes on throughout the book and how that feeling of suspense and a little bit of anxiety that resides in you for the entire ride. I like that it took place in Michigan, as I said, since I rarely read books that reside in my home state. The story was told from Helena's point of view, both in present and through her memories of her past in the marsh. I found myself a little frustrated with the character at times, but then I had to remind myself that through the memories, she is a child of 12. A child of 12 can be bratty and frankly very naive. The characters were interesting from start to finish, the plot was fast, and while some of the content was pretty intense, I felt that it was all needed for the story to come across as it did. For those of you that have sensitivities, there are some trigger warnings that you should be aware of. Some of the trigger warnings I would issue for this book are child abduction, rape, brutality towards women and children, as well as just brutality in general. You as the reader can really imagine the worst case scenario of someone being stolen and tortured as a child throughout adulthood. We only see a glimpse of the full scenario on the page that Karen Dion alludes to regarding the mother in her story, but that is more than enough. With all of that said, I'd still be happy to read another book by Karen Dion. I listened to this on audiobook, and I must tell you that Emily Rankin does an amazing job with her narration. I have listened to her before on other audiobooks, and I find her very enjoyable every time. Her voice is really excellent, and with the speed of her natural cadence, I was comfortable listening at a 1.25 speed. She had me full in on this story. I felt like I was right there with the characters, and that made for this a very quick listen. This narration combined with the writing style really made this an enjoyable title for me. Because of some of the intense scenes, I would recommend headphones for this listening experience. You would not want people at work hearing what you're listening to. Just trust me on that one. I rated The Marsh King's Daughter 4 out of 5. If you enjoy suspense titles that take place in obscure locations, I think you should check this out. This would also be an excellent book for book clubs. It definitely provides some interesting discussion, and it would be easy to discuss freestyle without predetermined questions. So we are actually also going to read this on an upcoming buddy read here on the podcast. So if you are not with us on the Facebook group, you definitely want to join now so that you can participate in the live chat of this book. Because I thought it was such a great selection for book club, we decided to do it here for our Shelf Addiction Book Club as well. So join us, and we'll be talking about this title soon. Join the group and follow me on social media, and you'll see when we kick off the reading of this title. Thanks for tuning in today. I look forward to speaking with you in the next episode. Until then, happy reading. Take care, everyone.